Hello, I'm Heather Turngren with Minneapolis Adult Education, and this morning I am going to be discussing the Certified Food Protection Manager credential with you all. If you take a look at the middle of the slide here, you can see an example of what that credential looks like. It's the sample credential that's issued from the Minnesota Department of Health. So we're going to talk about how you can help your learners get this credential. In this short video, I'll give you an overview of the state-issued credential. We'll talk about the process to earn that credential, as well as some of the nuts and bolts about getting students to have the certificate or credential in their hands. I realize that Certified Food Protection Manager credential is a mouthful. We call it CFPM for short. This came out of some of the updates from the National Food and Drug Administration, FDA. They made some changes to the food code, which is a list of regulations that many states adopt. Minnesota adopted the food code, and we now call this the CFPM certification that is needed in every establishment that serves food to the public. So again, it is a credential issued by the state Minnesota Department of Health. So it is what we might consider an industry recognized credential, especially in the state of Minnesota. And as I said, it is needed by any operation that serves food to the public. So think about this as you are maybe planning for your adult career pathway program or for an IET. And we know that CFPM could be a role within your adult career pathway programming or within your integrated education and training program. So let's think about why you should be considering the CFPM credential in either your ACP, Adult Career Pathway Program, or your IET, Integrated Education and Training. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is everyone needs to eat, right? It is an industry that probably will not go out of service. We all need food, and we want to just have food that's served to us safely so we don't get sick. We had the 2023 state legislature in Minnesota say that school lunches are now free in all schools. So this is a way for you to be thinking about partnering up with your local school districts on what their needs are now that they might see a higher demand for their school lunches. We also know that for many of our learners, they may not be able to pass the rigorous background checks that are often needed in some career sectors, say like healthcare. So it supports those people who have been formerly incarcerated, as well as people who are navigating documentation status here in the United States. So it could be a wonderful avenue for those learners. As we think about the CFPM, think about potential partners that you could work with within your adult career pathway or IET programming. First comes to mind restaurants, right? We go out to eat often. We also can think of food trucks. Food trucks are everywhere these days, and food trucks in the state of Minnesota need to have a CFPM. It's a great entrepreneurial opportunity for many of our learners who want to own their own business. We know it offers an avenue for those working in fast food, fine dining, but also think about cafeterias. I'm thinking about large workplace organizations where they might have a cafeteria located in their building and someone needs to have that CFPM. School lunchrooms, as I said, could be that potential partner. Also coffee shops, so think about that. They need a CFPM. And sports venues. Think about the different places around Minnesota where people gather to watch sporting events or other activities where there's food served to the public. Someone on staff needs to have this CFPM, and you could have a potential partner or an employer for those learners earning the CFPM. Care centers and facilities are another area. Think about nursing homes. They're offering food to the public. Group homes are now included, having to have a CFPM on site. Long-term care facilities, hospitals, adult daycare centers, Child care centers need to have CFPM on site if they are offering food or even snacks to the public. Food manufacturers. Minnesota is a state of agriculture. We do a lot of food manufacturing here. Those are potential employers or partners. Think about bakeries in your neighborhood area, in your local community. Groceries, if they're packing food for on site sales. Food shelves need to have a CFPM on site. Frozen food manufacturing are also included. So think about these strategies and ideas about reaching out to potential partners for your IET or ACP. The CFPM process is pretty much 1, 2, 3. The first course could be your training course. Pun was intended there, friends. So we would have the adult education program teach the content. It's usually about 40 hours of instruction to meet the pre and post testing needs. That second course would be for the students to take the exam. So they're taking an industry exam, and the exam will demonstrate that they have the skills needed to obtain the certificate. Students need to take an ANSI approved exam. We'll talk about that in a moment. That could either be paper-based or online, and then they receive a certificate showing they've successfully completed that exam. And then the final course would be to apply for the CFPM process. Students would send in an application that's pretty easy to fill out to the Minnesota Department of Health, send in that exam completion certificate that they got from the ANSI approved exam company, and in about 3 weeks they'll get their credential. I forgot to add, they'll also need to add a $35 check or money order to get that credential. So I mentioned ANSI. ANSI is the American National Standards Institute. They are a nonprofit national organization that helps to get all sorts of exams and standards approved throughout different industries. So ANSI works hard with the CFPM in order to determine the companies that deliver exams that meet the state's requirements. So in the state of Minnesota, we have to use only ANSI approved exams. So these would be companies that have met the rigors of ANSI to get the stamp of approval. As of April 1st, and it's not a joke, there are 10 different companies that provide this exam. Name recognition is also part of it. So many companies spend a lot on marketing so that you say words like ServeSafe. But ServeSafe is just the exam. We want students to get the CFPM. Another training company of the 10 is also 360 Training, which does all sorts of other industry recognized trainings. The exam costs can also come into play as you want to serve up CFPM to your students. So every company has a different exam fee structure, and I find that most are about $38 for an online exam. So when we think about those ANSI approved exam companies, please think that they are trying to sell us a product. They want us to buy their exam. However, all of these companies base their content on the FDA food code. So they are based on the same material. So here are some things for you to consider as you decide which company to go with. A lot of people go straight to the name they all say, ServeSafe. That is the brand name from the National Restaurant Association. It is the most widely known in the whole United States. They have big marketing for that name recognition. I'd like to point out their texts that they use are rather costly, and you can only purchase from that company. The current edition, which is the 8th edition, is around $94 per textbook for students to use. Another company is the National Registry of Food Safety Professionals. They are a company that also provides the exam that's approved for the CFPM. It's not as well known, but people that I work with in the field, not in adult education, but in the food service industry, say it might be a friendlier exam because there's less use of academic language in that exam that they give to students. 360 Training offers online exams. It might be less costly than some of the other exams. However, they might only be able to offer you online training, but you could think about having the students take an online training course from 360 Training to earn the exam as part of an IET. And this is a newer company, Always Food Safe Company. It's interesting because it's based in St. Paul. However, what I have found is that they may request you to pay up front to have access to their training materials, which are based mostly on videos. So, for your learners to get that initial credential, the CFPM, and renewal, here are some things, some food for thought, right? So, the CFPM is valid for 3 years. Although you take the exam from a company and that company might say, your exam certificate is valid for 5 years, the CFPM from the state is only valid for 3 years. Some notes about that CFPM from the state is that exam certificate from the exam company has to be within 6 months of the date that you took the exam for you to apply for the CFPM. You also need to renew the CFPM before its expiration date, which is 3 years from the date that you apply. The renewal is quite easy for the CFPM. Students would only need to attend a 4-hour approved renewal course, and you get approved going through the Minnesota Department of Health. You need to be an approved instructor to have and offer that renewal course. There's no exam needed. Some resources for you to explore further about the CFPM credential is your Atlas one-stop shop for many needs. I'd like to have you think, though, that many of the materials that are posted on the Atlas website were created before the 2022 FDA Food Code updates, so those materials will need some updating. I point people always to the Minnesota Department of Health, since that is the issuing agency for this credential. They have the most up-to-date information about the CFPM credential and its requirements. And also, I point out the city of Minneapolis is unique in that we have our own city health department. I say we because I live in the city, but within the city's health department, there are a lot of training videos in multiple languages that many of our ELs speak. It's their first language, and there are other posters that you could easily download. You might want to check your own county to see what sort of health department training opportunities they have for you. And with that, I would like to say thank you and bon appetit. Your next steps could be to check out the Atlas events for upcoming ACP and IET webinars. You can always contact me, reach out. You can see my email address there. I'm more than happy to help you navigate the way. And I need to say thanks to SlidesGo for their wonderful food-themed PowerPoint slide deck. So thank you and enjoy the rest of the ACP Institute.